If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. Chapter 1, Dawn on the Indus, The Birth of Cosmic Order, Part 1. The Sacred Flow of the Saraswati and Sindhu. The great rivers Saraswati and Sindhu flowed through lands where the first seeds of divine order were planted. Along these sacred waters, people built cities of perfect balance. They worshipped the life-giving streams as mothers of creation. Their bricks were laid with care. Their streets ran straight and clean. In every home, water flowed through channels built with skill and wisdom. These ancient people knew that water held the power of life itself. They carved seals showing sacred animals and strange symbols. The bull stood for strength. The trees reached toward heaven. Figures sat in poses of deep thought and prayer. Everything spoke of balance between earth and sky, between human work and divine blessing. The rivers were not just water to them. They were the flowing breath of the cosmos. Where water ran pure, there order ruled. Where cities rose in harmony, there divine will showed itself. They built great baths for cleansing the body and spirit. They honored the sacred feminine power that brings forth life from the womb of earth. Their craftsmen made pots and tools with perfect measure. Their weights were exact. Their trade was fair. Nothing was wasted. Everything had its place in the great pattern. The seals they carved carried messages of order across distant lands. Each symbol held meaning deeper than its shape. In their streets, no palace rose higher than needed. No temple crushed the homes of common people. Rich and poor shared the same careful drainage. All received clean water from the same pure source. This was their first lesson in cosmic law, that harmony comes when each part serves the whole. The sacred feminine danced in their art. The mother goddess blessed their grain stores. The horned god watched over their animals. Tree spirits blessed their orchards. River spirits blessed their boats. Every force of nature found honor in their daily life. When the monsoons came, they celebrated. When the rivers rose, they gave thanks. When the floods receded, they planted their crops with gratitude. They lived as children of the earth, knowing their place in the endless dance of seasons. Their cities showed divine geometry. Their art revealed sacred patterns. Their lives moved in rhythm with cosmic time. They were the first to see that human order must mirror divine order. They were the first to build cities that breathed with the pulse of creation. From their reverence for flowing water came the later understanding that Dharma itself flows like a river. From their worship of natural balance came the wisdom that righteousness must maintain cosmic harmony. From their sacred cities came the knowledge that human society must reflect divine design. Part 2. The Arrival of the Vedic Fire. From the sacred cities beside the flowing waters came new voices across the ancient lands. The Vedic people moved slowly toward the river valleys, bringing with them fire and sacred songs. They carried no written books, but held in their hearts the verses that would become the Rig Veda. Their greatest treasure was not gold or silver, but the knowledge of Agni, the divine fire that connects all worlds. Agni burns in 3 realms at once. He shines as the sun in the heavens above. He blazes as lightning in the middle air. He glows as sacred fire on the altars of earth. When the Vedic people lit their fires, they called upon this same divine force that lights the universe. Through Agni, their prayers reached the gods. Through Agni, the gods blessed human life. Through Agni, the cosmic order remained strong and true. The Yajna became the heart of their spiritual practice. This was not mere ritual, but the sacred act that keeps the world in balance. When they offered grain to the fire, they were feeding the cosmic powers. When they poured ghee into the flames, they were strengthening the bond between earth and heaven. When they chanted the sacred verses, they were speaking the same words that created the universe. Each offering had deep meaning. The fire that consumed the gifts carried them to the divine realm. The smoke that rose skyward became the clouds that bring rain. The rain that falls nourishes the earth. The earth that flourishes feeds all living beings. The cycle continues without end, maintained by the sacred exchange between gods and humans. Through yajna, personal duty and universal law became one. The householder who tends the sacred fire serves not just his family, but the entire cosmos. The priest who offers correct prayers maintains the rhythm of the seasons. The king who rules with righteousness upholds the divine order that governs all existence. This was the Vedic understanding. Every action either strengthens or weakens the cosmic balance. When people perform their duties with pure hearts, they support the divine plan. When they act with selfish motives, they disturb the natural order. The fire teaches this truth through its own nature. It gives light and warmth when properly tended. It brings destruction when neglected or misused. Agni became the divine priest, the perfect intermediary who never fails in his duty. He carries human offerings to the gods without error. He brings divine blessings to humans without delay. In his unwavering service, the Vedic people saw the model for their own lives. Like Agni, they must be faithful messengers between the earthly and heavenly realms. Thus began the great teaching that personal dharma and cosmic dharma are not separate, but one truth expressed in different forms. Part 3. The Age of Rishis and Revelation. The holy sages sat in deep silence by the sacred fires. They had performed countless rituals and offerings. They had spoken the ancient words with perfect precision. Yet something greater called to them from within. These wise men, the Rishis, began to see beyond the smoke of sacrifice and the chanting of mantras. In their quiet meditation, they discovered a truth that governed all existence. This truth they called Reta, the cosmic order that holds all things in their proper place. Reta is the law that makes the sun rise each morning. It is the force that brings the rains in their season. It guides the stars in their paths across the sky. It maintains the balance between day and night, between life and death, between creation and dissolution. The Rishis understood that this same order flows through human life. Just as the rivers follow their course to the sea, humans must follow their righteous path. Just as the seasons change in their appointed time, each person must fulfill their duties when called upon. In their visions, the sages saw that performing rituals alone was not enough. The fire ceremony has meaning only when the heart burns with truth. The offerings have power only when the mind is pure. The sacred words work only when spoken with understanding. They realize that the greatest temple is within the human soul. The most perfect sacrifice is offering one's selfish desires to the divine will. The highest prayer is living in harmony with the cosmic order. From this understanding grew a new way of seeking the divine. Instead of looking only to external ceremonies, the Rishis turned their attention inward. They asked the deepest questions. Who am I? What is the purpose of existence? How can I live in accordance with the universal law? Through years of contemplation, they discovered that the same divine principle that governs the cosmos also dwells in every human heart. This was the seed of what would later bloom into the great teaching of Dharma, righteous living that honors both individual nature and universal harmony. The ritual fire continued to burn in the sacrifice grounds, but now it burned also in the minds and hearts of seekers. The external ceremonies remained, but they became expressions of inner transformation. The Vedic hymns continued to be sung, but they became prayers for wisdom rather than mere requests for worldly gains. This shift from outer ritual to inner inquiry marked the birth of Hindu philosophical thought. The Rishis had discovered that true religion begins not with ceremonies, but with the sincere desire to understand truth and live according to cosmic law. Part 4. The Birth of Varna and Social Harmony. The cosmic order revealed by the Rishis needed earthly expression. As communities grew along the sacred rivers, a natural arrangement began to take shape. This was not the creation of rulers or the design of the powerful. It emerged from the understanding that all beings have different natures and different gifts to offer to the whole. The wise ones observed that some people were naturally drawn to learning and teaching. Their minds sought truth through study and contemplation. These became the Brahmins, the keepers of sacred knowledge. Their duty was to preserve the Vedas, perform rituals, and guide others in matters of Dharma. They were to live simply, speak truthfully, and share their wisdom freely. Others showed courage and strength with hearts that burned to protect the innocent. These became the Kshatriyas, the guardians of society. Their duty was to maintain order, defend against harm, and rule with justice. They were to be brave in battle, fair in judgment, and dedicated to the welfare of all people under their care. Many possessed skill in trade and the care of cattle and crops. These became the Vaishyas, the providers of wealth. Their duty was to engage in commerce, practice agriculture, and ensure that society's material needs were met. They were to be honest in their dealings, generous in their giving, and responsible stewards of resources. Still others found fulfillment in service to the community. These became the Shudras, whose duty was to support the other three groups through their labor. They were to work diligently, serve faithfully, and take pride in their contribution to the common good. This division was based on guna and karma, the natural qualities and actions of each person. It was not meant to create higher and lower beings, but to create harmony like the parts of a body. The head thinks, the arms protect, the stomach nourishes, and the legs support. Each part is necessary, each has dignity. The ancient texts taught that a Brahmin who abandoned his duties was no true Brahmin. A Kshatriya who acted without Dharma lost his nobility. A Vaishya who cheated in business fell from his station. A Shudra who served with devotion earned great merit. This arrangement rested on 4 pillars. First was fairness. Each person should receive what their nature and actions deserved. Second was self-control. Each should master their desires and perform their duties without attachment to results. Third was respect. Each Varna should honor the others and recognize their importance. Fourth was commitment to duty. Each should fulfill their role with dedication, seeing it as service to the cosmic order. When these principles guided society, there was balance and prosperity. When they were forgotten or corrupted, there was conflict and suffering. This early framework became the foundation of Hindu moral thought, teaching that true nobility comes not from birth alone, but from righteous action in accordance with one's nature and duty. Part 5. Transition to thought, from ritual to reflection. The dawn of wisdom began when the sacred fires still burned, but the minds of the wise started to question what lay beyond the smoke and offerings. In the later days of the Vedic age, when the hymns had been chanted for generations, a new hunger arose among the seekers. They no longer found complete satisfaction in the elaborate rituals and grand sacrifices that had long been the path to the divine. The sages began to withdraw from the busy ceremonial grounds to the quiet forests. There, under the ancient trees, they gathered students around them and began to ask the deepest questions. What is the true nature of the self? What is the source of all existence? How can one find lasting peace and truth? These questions became more important than the perfect pronunciation of mantras or the precise arrangement of sacrificial fires. The teachers and students sat together in circles, engaging in dialogue and debate. They examined every aspect of existence through careful reasoning and direct experience. This method of inquiry replaced the old way of seeking truth only through ritual performance. The forest became the new temple, and inner investigation became the new sacrifice. From these profound conversations came the great teachings that would shape all future spiritual thought. The wise ones discovered that the individual soul, called Atman, and the universal spirit, called Brahman, were not separate entities. They realized that what appears as the individual self and what appears as the cosmic reality are fundamentally one and the same. This revolutionary understanding was captured in the sacred phrase, Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. These three simple words contained the entire essence of the new wisdom. When a teacher spoke these words to a student, they were revealing the ultimate truth that the divine essence sought outside is already present within. The student was being told that his true nature was identical to the supreme reality of the universe. Other great statements emerged from this period of intense spiritual discovery. Aham Brahmasmi declared, I am Brahman, pointing to the direct realization of one's divine nature. Ayam Atma Brahma stated, this self is Brahman, confirming the unity between individual consciousness and universal consciousness. These profound truths became known as the great sentences that could instantly awaken understanding in a prepared mind. The shift from external ritual to internal realization marked a crucial turning point in human spiritual development. The elaborate ceremonies, while still respected, were now understood as symbolic preparations for the real work of self-discovery. The true sacrifice was the offering of ignorance into the fire of knowledge. The real purification happened through the recognition of one's inherent divinity. This transition established self-knowledge as the highest human pursuit. The ancient wisdom recognized that lasting fulfillment could only come through understanding one's true nature, not through temporary pleasures or external achievements. This principle became the foundation for all subsequent spiritual teaching, creating an eternal framework for human moral and spiritual development. Chapter 2. Dharma Ascendant, the Architecture of Moral Law. Part 1. The Age of Epics and Moral Dilemmas. When Prince Arjuna stood on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, his bow fell from his hands. Before him stood his own family, teachers, and friends ready for war. His heart filled with sorrow, and he spoke to Krishna, his charioteer and guide. How can I fight against those who taught me? How can I kill my own brothers and uncles for a kingdom? It is better to live as a beggar than to win this war with their blood. Krishna looked at Arjuna with compassion and said, You speak wise words, but your heart is confused. A warrior must do his duty. This is your dharma, your righteous path. But killing is wrong, Arjuna replied. How can violence ever be right? Krishna taught him, Look deeper. The body dies, but the soul lives forever. You cannot kill the soul. It only moves from one body to another, like a person changing old clothes for new ones. Your duty as a warrior is to fight for what is right, but do your duty without wanting the results. Work without being attached to success or failure. This is the path of wisdom. In the great story of Ramayana, Prince Rama faced his own choice. His father promised him the throne, but his stepmother demanded that Rama go to the forest for 14 years. Though this caused him great pain, Rama chose to honor his father's word. A son must obey his father, Rama said. Truth is more important than comfort or power. When his wife Sita was taken by the demon king Ravana, Rama could have used any means to get her back, but he chose to fight with honor, following the rules of war even against an evil enemy. These great stories teach us that doing what is right is not always simple. Sometimes we must choose between different good things. Sometimes what seems wrong in one situation is right in another. The wise person looks at each situation carefully. They ask what will help the most people. They consider their own duty and position in life. A king's dharma is different from a teacher's dharma. A parent's duty is different from a child's duty. But in all cases, the heart must be pure. We must act without selfishness, anger, or greed. We must think of others before ourselves. We must speak truth and keep our promises. The epics show us that even the best people face hard choices. Even gods in human form must struggle with right and wrong. This is how we learn that Dharma is not a simple rulebook. It is a way of living that requires wisdom, courage, and a clean heart. Part 2. The Song of Duty, Krishna's Call to Arjuna. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Prince Arjuna stands ready for war. His bow falls from his hands. His mind fills with doubt and sorrow. Before him stand his own family members, teachers, and friends ready to fight against him. Arjuna speaks to his chariot driver, Lord Krishna. "I cannot fight this war, Krishna. These are my own people. My grandfather Bhishma stands there. My teacher Drona is there too. How can I kill them for a kingdom? What good is victory if it comes by killing those I love? I will not fight." Krishna looks at Arjuna with compassion and speaks divine wisdom. "You grieve for those who should not be mourned. The soul never dies, Arjuna. Bodies are like clothes that we change. The soul moves from one body to another. Death is not the end. You are a warrior, Arjuna. Fighting in a just war is your dharma. Your duty is to protect the good and stop the evil. If you run away from this duty, you will bring shame upon yourself." Arjuna asks, "But how can I act without sin? How can I fight without being attached to the results?" Krishna teaches him the path of karma yoga. Do your duty, but do not think about success or failure. Do not work for rewards or praise. Work because it is right. Give all your actions to God. This is how you can act without creating bad karma. The wise person works without attachment. He does his job well, but does not worry about what he will get. He treats success and failure the same way. He helps others without expecting anything back. Krishna explains that there are different paths to reach God. Some people pray and worship. Some people study and think deeply. But the path of action is also sacred when done with the right heart. Even I must work, Arjuna, though I need nothing. If I stopped working, the world would fall apart. Good people must keep working to show others the right way. Fight this war with a pure heart. See me in all beings. See all beings in me. Remember that I am present in everything. Do your duty as worship to me. Krishna shows Arjuna that true wisdom means acting in the world while staying connected to the divine. We cannot run away from our duties. We must face them with courage and faith. The person who has given up attachment to results, who treats friend and enemy equally, who remains calm in happiness and sadness, such a person is dear to me. This teaching became the guide for millions of people. It shows how to live a spiritual life while doing worldly work. We can be devoted to God while being responsible citizens, parents, and workers. The Gita teaches that all honest work is sacred when done without selfishness. Whether we are farmers, teachers, rulers, or servants, we can find God through our daily duties. Part 3. The Code of Conduct, Manusmriti and Smriti Traditions. The ancient sages understood that society needed clear rules to guide human behavior. They saw that people required written laws to help them know right from wrong. Thus began the great work of creating sacred texts that would guide families, rulers, and communities for generations. The wise ones called these texts Smritis, meaning that which is remembered. These books contain the wisdom passed down from teacher to student across many centuries. The Smritis took the eternal truths of the Vedas and made them practical for daily life. They showed people how to live according to Dharma in their homes, their work, and their relationships with others. The most famous of these texts is the Manusmriti, also called the Laws of Manu. This sacred book declares, Dharma is the foundation of all existence. When Dharma is protected, it protects all beings. When Dharma is destroyed, society falls into chaos. The Manusmriti teaches that every person has duties based on their birth, their stage of life, and their role in society. It says, The student must learn with devotion. The householder must support family and society. The forest dweller must seek spiritual wisdom. The renunciant must find union with the divine. These laws divided society into 4 main groups, each with sacred duties. The priests must teach and perform rituals. The warriors must protect the land and people. The merchants must create wealth through honest trade. The workers must serve others through their labor. The text declares, when each person follows their appointed duty, the whole world remains in harmony. The book provides detailed guidance for rulers. It states, a king must be like the sun, giving light and warmth to all people equally. He must protect the weak from the strong and ensure that justice flows like a river through the land. Kings were taught to rule not for personal gain, but as servants of Dharma itself. For family life, the Manusmriti offers clear instructions. It teaches the home is a sacred space where parents guide children and husbands support wives in their duties. Children must honor their parents as gods. Parents must teach children the path of righteousness. The text speaks extensively about women's roles, declaring, where women are honored, there the gods rejoice. Where they are not honored, all sacred actions become fruitless. Yet it also places women under the protection of fathers, husbands, and sons, reflecting the social customs of its time. The laws of purity form another major teaching. The text explains that certain actions make a person ritually unclean and provides methods for purification. It states, purity of body leads to purity of mind. Purity of mind leads to clarity of understanding. Clear understanding leads to knowledge of the divine. Critics have questioned many teachings in the Manusmriti, especially regarding social hierarchy and women's independence. Yet supporters argue that the text aimed to create stable society where everyone had a place and purpose. They claim its true message is that all honest work serves the divine plan. The Smriti tradition extends far beyond Manu alone. Other great teachers like Yajnavalkya and Parasara created their own law books. These texts adapted ancient wisdom to changing times while preserving core principles of righteous living. Part 4. Ahimsa and the Philosophies of Compassion. The great teachers Mahavira and Buddha brought new light to the world of moral thinking. They taught that the highest virtue is ahimsa, the complete avoidance of harm to all living beings. This teaching spread like gentle rain across the land, changing how people understood right and wrong. Mahavira taught that every soul, from the smallest insect to the greatest human, has equal value. He said that violence in thought, word, or deed creates pain that binds the soul. To be free, one must practice complete nonviolence. Even the plants and stones have life, he declared. Therefore, the wise person walks carefully, speaks gently, and thinks with compassion. Buddha taught that all suffering comes from desire and attachment. He showed that hatred never ends through more hatred, but only through love. When someone hurts us, responding with kindness breaks the chain of pain. He said that anger is like holding a hot coal to throw at someone else. You burn yourself first. These teachings reached Hindu thinkers and changed their understanding. Earlier practices focused much on ritual cleanliness and proper ceremonies, but now people began to see that true purity comes from a compassionate heart. A person could perform all the right rituals, yet still cause harm through cruel words or selfish actions. What value did such ceremonies have? Hindu teachers started teaching that ahimsa is the foundation of all other virtues. The ancient texts were read with new eyes. The Upanishads had already taught that the same divine spark lives in all beings. Now, this truth became a practical guide for daily life. If the divine dwells in every creature, then harming any creature is harming the divine itself. The practice of nonviolence grew beyond just avoiding physical harm. It meant speaking truthfully but kindly. It meant earning wealth without cheating others. It meant governing with justice rather than force. Kings who followed these teachings were praised for protecting the weak and feeding the hungry. This moral change created a circle of growth. As Hindu thought absorbed the lessons of compassion, it became richer and deeper. The Buddhist idea of loving kindness combined with Hindu devotion to create new forms of worship and service. The Jain emphasis on self-discipline strengthened Hindu practices of meditation and yoga. Even today, when people speak of Hindu values, they mention Ahimsa as central. The ancient ritual traditions remain, but they are understood through the lens of compassion. A sacrifice that harms others has no value. A prayer that increases pride and hatred misses its purpose. True worship happens when one serves all life with respect and care. Part 5. The Syncretic Ideal. Synthesis under the Gupta Age. The great kings of the Gupta Age understood that human life needs balance. They saw that people must follow duty, earn wealth, enjoy love, and seek freedom from suffering. These four goals, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, form the foundation of a complete life. During this golden time, wise rulers created laws that honored both ancient customs and new wisdom. They did not force one way of thinking on all people. Instead, they let different beliefs grow together like flowers in a garden. Village traditions mixed with the teachings of great scholars. Simple prayers joined with complex philosophy. The result was a way of life that could change and grow while keeping its deep roots. The poets and artists of this age created works that showed how these four goals worked together. They wrote stories of kings who ruled justly while seeking wealth for their people. They carved images of gods who blessed both love and duty. They built temples where merchants could pray for success and saints could meditate on higher truths. In the courts of the Gupta kings, learned men debated how to live well. They agreed that wealth without dharma leads to corruption. Love without duty destroys families. Duty without wisdom becomes blind following. And the search for moksha without caring for the world becomes selfish escape. The laws they created reflected this balance. A king must protect his people but not become greedy for power. A merchant must earn fairly but also give to those in need. A householder must love his family but remember that all souls are connected. A seeker of truth must leave attachments but not abandon compassion. This period saw the rise of great universities, where students learned not just one subject, but many. They studied medicine and poetry together. They learned mathematics and music side by side. They understood that human nature has many aspects, and all must be honored. The temples built during this time show this same balance. They had spaces for quiet meditation and areas for celebration. They welcomed both the learned and the simple. Rich carvings told stories of gods and humans facing the same struggles that people face today. Local customs were not destroyed, but were given deeper meaning. Old festivals gained new songs. Ancient rituals received fresh explanations. The wisdom of grandmothers mixed with the insights of philosophers. This created a culture that felt both familiar and inspiring. The Gupta synthesis showed that a moral system can be both eternal and flexible. It can hold to basic truths while adapting to new times. It can respect tradition while welcoming growth. This balance made Hindu values strong enough to survive centuries of change while remaining meaningful to each new generation. Chapter 3: Tempests and Transformation. Challenges to the Eternal Dharma. Part 1: The Tide of Invaders. Foreign wars and faith under trial. The armies came from the west like a great storm. They carried swords and new prayers. They brought a different God and different ways of worship. The rulers of these foreign lands looked at our temples and saw wealth. They looked at our statues and called them false idols. Many temples fell. Many priests fled to the forests. But the Dharma did not die. It bent like a tree in the wind, but did not break. Our people learned to worship in secret places. They hid the sacred images in their homes. They sang the holy songs in quiet voices when the rulers were not listening. The old rituals changed. Where once hundreds gathered for great ceremonies, now small groups met in hidden spaces. The temple bells grew silent, but the prayers continued in the heart. The Sanskrit verses were translated into local words so more people could understand them. The wise teachers learned the language of the new rulers but kept teaching the old truths. Our artists became clever. They painted the gods in ways that looked like ordinary people. They carved stories into stone where only those who knew could read the meaning. The dancers learned new steps but kept the old spirit. The singers composed songs that sounded simple but carried deep wisdom for those who truly listened. The common people held fast to their faith. Mothers still taught their children about Ram and Krishna while making bread. Farmers still prayed to the earth goddess before planting seeds. Merchants still offered flowers to Ganesha before starting their work. The festivals continued in smaller ways, but with the same joy. Some of our people learned from the newcomers. They saw good things in the foreign faith and added them to their understanding. They learned about the unity of God and made it part of their own prayers. They found that devotion to one supreme being could exist alongside love for many divine forms. The wise teachers wrote new books. They explained the old truths in new words. They showed how the eternal Dharma could live under any rule and in any time. They taught that the real temple is in the heart, and no army can destroy what lives there. Through these dark years, the faith grew stronger in some ways. It learned to survive without grand buildings. It learned to speak in simple words that all people could understand. It learned to adapt while keeping its true nature unchanged. The Dharma proved that it belonged not to kings or priests alone, but to all people who sought truth and righteousness. It showed that no earthly power could destroy what is eternal. Part 2. The Bhakti Revolution. Love as the New Dharma. When storms of change swept across the land and old ways seemed to crumble, a new light began to shine. This light was not found in grand temples or complex rituals. It came from the hearts of simple people who discovered that love itself could be their path to God. In the South, holy singers called alvars began to compose songs of pure devotion. They sang not in the language of scholars, but in the tongue their mothers spoke. They declared that God was not distant or difficult to reach. He was as close as their own breath, waiting for them to call his name with true love. The Nayanmars, devoted to Shiva, walked from village to village, singing of their Lord's grace. They taught that no birth or station in life could block a person from God's love. A merchant, a farmer, or even one born in the lowest family could achieve what the highest priest might never reach if their love was pure and their surrender complete. These saints spoke bold words. They said that ritual without love was empty noise. They said that learning without devotion was like a lamp without oil. They said that God cared nothing for a person's caste or wealth, but only for the sincerity of their heart. From Bengal came Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, dancing in the streets and singing the names of Krishna. He gathered around him people of every background, scholars and laborers, rich and poor, high-born and low. Together, they danced and sang, lost in divine joy. He taught that this joy was not for a chosen few, but for anyone who would open their heart to love. The Bhakti movement spread like wildfire across the land. It gave voice to those who had been told they were too low to approach God directly. It taught mothers that their lullabies could be prayers. It showed farmers that their honest work could be worship. It told everyone that they need not wait for priests or complicated ceremonies to find the divine. This revolution was quiet but powerful. It needed no armies or royal support. It conquered hearts through songs, stories, and simple truths. It taught that the highest Dharma was not following endless rules, but loving God with complete surrender and seeing that same divine presence in every living being. Part 3. The Mystic Response: Saints, Poets, and Philosophers. The mystic poets arose like stars in the darkest night of Dharma. When formal religion became distant and cold, these saints spoke in the language of the heart. They used simple words that common people could understand. They sang in local tongues rather than classical Sanskrit. Their verses carried the deepest truths, wrapped in everyday images. Kabir the Weaver challenged both Hindu and Muslim authorities with his direct words. He said the divine lives neither in temples nor mosques, but in the pure heart. He taught that rituals mean nothing without inner cleansing. His poems cut through religious divisions like a sharp sword cuts cloth. He declared that God belongs to no single faith, but dwells in all sincere seekers. Mira the princess abandoned her royal palace for love of Krishna. She danced in the streets, singing her devotion. Society called her mad, but she called herself blessed. Her songs told women they could love God directly without asking permission from men or priests. She proved that the heart's devotion matters more than social position or family honor. Tulsidas wrote the Ramayana in common Hindi, so ordinary people could understand Ram's story. He showed how Dharma lives not in difficult philosophy books, but in daily choices between right and wrong. His verses taught that serving others with humility brings one closer to God than performing elaborate ceremonies. He made the highest spiritual truths available to farmers and merchants. Basava in the South spoke against the rigid caste system. He taught that all honest work serves the divine equally. He said the body itself is a temple where God dwells. His followers included people from every level of society, working together as spiritual equals. He proved that inner purity matters more than birth or occupation. These mystics used simple metaphors that everyone could grasp. They compared God to water that takes the shape of any container. They said the divine is like salt dissolved in ocean water, present everywhere but invisible. They taught that spiritual seeking is like a moth drawn to flame, willing to give up everything for union with the beloved. Their poems spread from village to village through wandering singers. Common people memorized verses while working in fields or cooking meals. These songs became part of daily life, shaping how people thought about right and wrong. The mystics created a spiritual democracy where anyone could approach the divine through sincere love. The authority of these saints came not from formal learning, but from their transformed lives. People saw that their words matched their actions. They lived simply, helped the poor, and treated all beings with respect. Their example proved that true spiritual attainment shows itself through ethical behavior and compassionate service. Their legacy continues to guide ethical consciousness today. Their verses still remind people that external differences matter less than inner purity. They taught religious harmony by finding the common spiritual ground beneath surface distinctions. Their poetry keeps alive the truth that the divine presence flows through all life like an invisible river of grace. Part 4. Colonial Encounter: Ethics Under Empire. When British rule spread across the Indian land, it brought with it a new way of seeing right and wrong. The colonial government created courts that followed English law instead of ancient dharmic rules. These foreign laws often went against Hindu customs about family, property, and community duties. People found themselves caught between the old ways their ancestors had followed for thousands of years and the new rules imposed by their rulers. Christian missionaries arrived with the colonial power. They spoke against Hindu practices they did not understand. They called the worship of many gods false religion. They said Hindu scriptures contained backward ideas. They criticized the caste system and certain social customs. Many missionaries believed their way was the only path to salvation. They built schools and hospitals, but taught that Hindu traditions held people back from progress. The colonial education system taught Indian children to think like Europeans. Young people learned English literature and Western philosophy. They studied European history as if it was more important than their own past. This education made many Indians feel ashamed of their heritage. Some began to see their own culture as outdated and inferior. The new learning created a divide between the educated class and common people who still followed traditional ways. Hindu thinkers faced a great challenge. They had to defend their faith against these criticisms while also accepting that some reforms were needed. They could not simply reject all Western ideas because some brought useful knowledge. At the same time, they could not abandon their spiritual heritage without losing their soul. Reformers like Ram Mohan Roy began to study both Hindu scriptures and Western thought. They found ways to show that Hindu teachings already contained the highest truths about human equality and rational thinking. They argued that problems in Hindu society came from wrong practices, not from the religion itself. They worked to remove harmful customs while keeping the eternal spiritual principles. These leaders reinterpreted ancient concepts for modern times. They explained Dharma not just as following old rules, but as acting according to universal moral principles. They spoke of freedom not just as political independence, but as spiritual liberation from ignorance. They showed how duty could include service to society and nation, not just to family and caste. The colonial period forced Hinduism to examine itself deeply. This examination led to a clearer understanding of what was truly essential in the tradition. The encounter with Western modernity, though painful, helped Hindu thought evolve while keeping its roots strong. The moral confrontation with empire ultimately strengthened the ethical foundation of Hindu civilization. Part 5. Reform and Renewal: The Rise of Modern Dharma. The Great Awakening began when spiritual teachers arose to revive the ancient wisdom. These masters took the eternal truths and spoke them in the language of their time. They showed how the old teachings could guide people in the modern world. Swami Vivekananda carried the message of Vedanta across the oceans. He taught that all souls are divine and that serving humanity is the highest worship. He said that strength, not weakness, is life. He told the world that every person has God within them. His words rang out, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." He showed that Dharma means not just personal purity, but working for the good of all people. Dayananda Saraswati called people back to the pure Vedas. He said truth alone triumphs, and that God's light shines in every human heart. He taught that religion should be based on reason and not blind faith. He worked to remove social evils and bring equality between men and women. His voice declared that the Vedas belong to all humanity, not to any single group. Ramakrishna lived the truth of all paths leading to the same God. He practiced different ways of worship and found the same divine presence in each. He taught through simple stories that common people could understand. He said that God can be realized through sincere devotion, whether one follows the path of knowledge, love, or service. These teachers made Dharma alive for their age. They showed that ancient wisdom could answer modern questions. They taught that true religion brings people together instead of dividing them. They said that serving the poor is serving God. They proved that rational thinking and spiritual experience can work together. They spoke of Dharma as duty toward all creation. They taught that every person, regardless of birth or station, has the right to seek truth. They showed how old practices could be reformed while keeping the spiritual essence pure. They demonstrated that Hindu thought could speak to the whole world without losing its sacred character. Their message was clear. Dharma is eternal because it serves life itself. It grows and changes its outer forms while keeping its inner truth unchanged. It speaks to each age in the language that age can understand. It offers both personal liberation and social service as paths to the same goal. These great souls proved that Hindu values could guide not just India, but all humanity. They showed that Dharma is not bound by geography or time, but belongs to every sincere seeker of truth. Chapter 4. The Global Journey, the Modern Resonance of Hindu Values. Part 1. Ahimsa in Action, Gandhi and the Moral Revolution. When truth was made flesh in the form of Mohandas Gandhi, the ancient teachings of the Bhagavad Gita found their expression in the struggle for freedom. Gandhi took the sacred principle of ahimsa, non-violence, and showed the world how it could move mountains without lifting a sword. Truth is God, Gandhi declared, making Satya the foundation of all action. He understood that truth without ahimsa becomes harsh, and ahimsa without truth becomes weak. Together, they formed an unbreakable weapon, stronger than any army. This was not merely political strategy, but spiritual practice made manifest in the world of nations and power. The Mahatma transformed personal virtues into collective force. Self-restraint became satyagraha, the holding fast to truth. What the ancient sages practiced in forest retreats, Gandhi brought to the public square. Fasting became a tool for awakening conscience. Simple living became a challenge to material excess. Prayer became preparation for righteous action. Be the change you wish to see in the world, he taught, echoing the Gita's call for inner transformation preceding outer reform. Gandhi showed that true revolution begins within the human heart. The spinning wheel replaced the sword. The salt march replaced the battle charge. Peaceful resistance replaced violent uprising. His interpretation of karma yoga found expression in seva, selfless service. Gandhi cleaned latrines, nursed the sick, and served the untouchables, showing that no work is beneath those who seek truth. He demonstrated that Dharma, righteous duty, applies equally to sweeping floors and governing nations. The impact spread far beyond India's shores. Martin Luther King Jr. carried these teachings to America's civil rights movement. Nelson Mandela applied them in South Africa's struggle against apartheid. Peaceful protesters across continents found in Gandhi's example a pathway to justice without revenge. Gandhi's genius lay in showing that ancient Hindu values could address modern problems. He proved that spiritual principles need not remain confined to temples and ashrams, but could transform societies. His life became a living scripture, demonstrating that the eternal Dharma remains relevant in every age. The Mahatma's synthesis of Hindu philosophy with practical politics created a new model for human progress. He showed the world that strength lies not in violence, but in the courage to suffer for truth. His experiment with truth became humanity's experiment with its own highest possibilities. Through Gandhi, the timeless wisdom of the Hindu sages reached global consciousness, offering a path of transformation that honored both individual dignity and collective progress. Part 2. Self-realization and scientific spirituality. The practical wisdom that Gandhi demonstrated found deeper philosophical expression through three remarkable teachers who brought ancient Indian knowledge into dialogue with modern thinking. Sri Aurobindo, Swami Vivekananda, and Paramahansa Yogananda each took the eternal truths of Vedanta and presented them as living science rather than mere belief. These masters understood that the modern mind required evidence and experience, not blind faith. They transformed spiritual seeking from ritualistic practice into experimental psychology. Where traditional teaching spoke of liberation in mystical terms, they offered practical methods that rational minds could test and verify. Vivekananda spoke to the Parliament of Religions in Chicago with the authority of one who had realized truth through direct experience. He presented Vedanta not as Indian philosophy, but as universal science of consciousness. His message was simple. Every soul possesses divine nature, and this truth can be discovered through systematic practice. Religion becomes psychology when we examine the mind's capacity for infinite expansion. Sri Aurobindo went further, seeing human evolution as a spiritual process guided by consciousness itself. He showed how ancient texts described what modern science was beginning to understand about the mind's hidden powers. Evolution, he taught, moves not just through physical forms, but through levels of consciousness. Humanity stands poised to develop new capacities that traditional yoga had always promised. Paramahansa Yogananda brought scientific precision to meditation techniques that had remained secret for centuries. He demonstrated how breathing, concentration, and devotion could produce measurable changes in body and mind. His teaching transformed prayer from petition into laboratory work with consciousness itself. These teachers shared a revolutionary insight. Spiritual realization follows natural laws just as physics and chemistry do. The ancient Rishis had been scientists of inner space, mapping territories of consciousness with the same precision that modern researchers study outer phenomena. Meditation became experiment, realization became evidence, and faith transformed into hypothesis tested through practice. They showed Western seekers that Hindu wisdom offered not escape from reason, but its completion. Science studies the objective world, while Vedanta studies the subject who knows all objects. Together, they form complete knowledge. The same consciousness that produces scientific discovery can turn inward and discover its own source. This scientific spirituality appealed to minds trained in empirical method. Instead of asking people to believe ancient claims, these teachers invited them to verify timeless truths through personal experiment. Karma became psychological law, Dharma became ethical science, and moksha became the natural result of understanding consciousness fully. Their work established Hindu values not as cultural tradition, but as universal principles validated by experience. They prepared ground for yoga, meditation, and Vedantic psychology to take root in societies far from India's shores. Part 3. The Diaspora Spirit, Hindu Values Abroad. When people from India began traveling to distant lands in large numbers, they carried something precious within them. This was not gold or jewels, but the values their ancestors had lived by for thousands of years. They brought the idea that all people deserve respect, that truth must be spoken, that work should be done with dedication, and that God can be found in many forms. In countries across the world, these Indian families built temples. These sacred places became much more than buildings for worship. They became schools where children learned about their heritage. They became meeting places where community members gathered to celebrate festivals and solve problems together. They became centers where the wisdom of ancient texts was shared with new generations born far from India. The mothers and fathers who had left India understood something important. They knew that values are not preserved by force, but by example. They showed their children how to respect elders by caring for grandparents in their homes. They demonstrated honesty in their business dealings. They practiced generosity by helping other families in need. They lived simply, saved wisely, and shared their good fortune with those who had less. Young people born in these new countries faced special challenges. They spoke different languages at home and at school. They celebrated different holidays than their classmates. They ate different foods and followed different customs. Yet many of them found strength in this difference. They learned that their traditions taught them to be comfortable with diversity. Their scriptures had always said that truth appears in many forms, so they could respect other faiths while keeping their own. Cultural organizations grew up around these communities. They organized dance classes where children learned classical Indian forms. They held music concerts where ancient songs were performed. They created language schools where young people could read the texts their ancestors had written. Through these activities, values passed from one generation to the next. These communities discovered that Hindu values worked well within democratic societies. The idea that all souls are equal supported the principle that all citizens deserve equal treatment. The teaching that each person must follow their own path toward truth matched well with freedom of religion. The belief that actions create consequences encouraged people to vote responsibly and serve their communities. As these families prospered in their new homes, they found ways to give back. They built hospitals and schools. They supported research and education. They helped other immigrant communities adjust to life in new countries. In doing this, they followed the ancient teaching that those who have been blessed must use their blessings to help others. The values that had guided life in Indian villages for centuries proved flexible enough to guide life in modern cities. Duty remained important, but now it meant being good citizens as well as good family members. Spiritual practice continued, but now it happened in suburban temples as well as mountain caves. The eternal principles remained the same, but their expression adapted to new circumstances and new opportunities. Part 4. The Yoga Renaissance. Body, Mind, and Dharma Reunited. The Yoga Renaissance. Body, Mind, and Dharma Reunited. In ancient times, yoga was the path of the seeker who left the world behind. The wise ones went to caves and forests to practice. They sat still for hours. They controlled their breath. They watched their thoughts. This was their way to find truth. The old texts taught that the body was a temple. The mind was a tool. The spirit was the real self. These three parts needed to work together. When they did, a person could know their true nature. This was the goal of all practice. The ancient yogis understood something important. The body affects the mind. The mind affects the spirit. None of these parts can be ignored. Each one needs care and attention. This was not just about being healthy. It was about being whole. For many centuries, this knowledge stayed in India. Teachers passed it to students. Students became teachers. The wisdom moved from person to person, like a sacred flame that never goes out. Then the world began to change. People from different countries started to learn about yoga. At first, they saw it as exercise. They wanted strong bodies and calm minds. This was good, but it was only the beginning. Slowly, people discovered that yoga was more than stretching and breathing. It was a way of living. The same focus needed in difficult poses was needed in difficult times. The patience learned on the mat helped in daily life. The peace found in meditation stayed beyond the practice time. The ancient teaching of balance became important to modern people. In busy cities, yoga offered rest. In stressful jobs, it brought calm. In lonely times, it connected people to something larger than themselves. The old wisdom found new homes in new hearts. Teachers began to share the deeper parts of yoga. They spoke about Dharma, doing what is right. They taught about detachment, not being controlled by wanting things. They explained mindfulness, paying attention to what is happening now. These ideas helped people in all parts of their lives. Yoga studios opened everywhere. People from all backgrounds came together. They learned that the body could be strong without being violent. The mind could be peaceful without being weak. The spirit could be free without running away from responsibility. The practice that once required leaving the world now helped people live better in the world. Office workers did breathing exercises at their desks. Parents used meditation to stay patient with their children. Students learned focus through poses and carried it to their studies. Modern science began to study what the ancients already knew. Doctors found that yoga helped the body heal. Researchers discovered it made the mind clearer. Psychologists saw how it reduced worry and sadness. The old knowledge met new understanding. The transformation was complete when people realized they were not just exercising. They were following an ancient path of wisdom. Each pose was a lesson in patience. Each breath was a moment of awareness. Each class was a gathering of souls seeking truth together. Part 5. The Eternal Flame. Sanatana Dharma in the Age of AI. The ancient wisdom teaches us that Dharma never fades. It burns like an eternal flame through every age. Today, as machines learn to think and humans question their place in the world, the old truths shine with new light. When people create thinking machines, they face the same questions the sages asked long ago. What is right action? How do we serve without causing harm? The law of karma reminds us that every choice creates consequences. Each line of code written carries responsibility. Each decision made by artificial minds reflects the intentions of those who built them. The scriptures tell us that all beings are connected. This truth becomes clear when we see how technology links every person on Earth. A message sent from one land reaches another in moments. Actions in distant places affect lives everywhere. The ancient teaching of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam speaks to this reality. The whole world is one family. Dharma calls us to right action in our time. When companies build machines that can decide, they must ask what serves the highest good. When scientists change the climate, they must consider their duty to future generations. When people lose themselves in digital worlds, they must remember their true nature. The old texts speak of different stages of life and different duties for each. Today, we must understand our Dharma as creators of new worlds. The student learns not just from books, but from algorithms. The householder provides not just for family, but considers the Earth's resources. The leader guides not just people, but the development of thinking machines. Karma teaches that every action has results. In our connected world, these results spread faster and wider than ever before. The harm we cause returns to us. The good we do multiplies across networks. The ancient law operates through fiber optic cables and satellite signals. When people feel lost in the rush of change, the eternal teachings offer anchor. Meditation practiced for thousands of years helps minds stay calm amid digital noise. The practice of seeing the divine in all beings includes seeing it in those we meet through screens. Service to others extends to protecting their data and privacy. The crisis of identity that comes with rapid change is not new. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of Arjuna's confusion before battle. Today's confusion comes not from war, but from wondering what it means to be human when machines can think. The answer remains the same. Know your true self. Do your duty. Serve the greater good. As humanity shapes its digital future, the ancient flame burns on. The conversation between individual soul and universal consciousness continues. New tools change the form, but not the essence of this eternal dialogue.